Music theory. Why do many musicians, especially guitarists, think that being uneducated is a good thing? Maybe it's because any guitarist who ever played any kind of loud music really didn't like going to one of these places. So yeah, you can make music without knowing any theory, but what you're really doing is utilizing theory without knowing what anything is really called.
It always started with the sound.
Yeah.
And then I would find the words.
And so it's just a matter of visual or pattern recognition on the instrument rather than knowing the traditional names for what you're playing. But what happens if you do get educated? Will it screw up your vibe and turn you into the suit and tie version of a musician?
Leopold!
That's a misconception, and it's among 5 common ones that we're going to discuss in 4.3 seconds. Number 1 is the most common one, and that's that you think you'll stop playing with feeling if you learn music theory. There's this thing that happens when students are first trying to learn scales, and where they're memorizing the patterns, where they just tend to play them top to bottom with every note in order, and it kind of doesn't sound like music yet, it's just the pattern of the scale. And even when they first start learning to use the scales and they're maybe improvising over a backing track or something, it still will have that kind of numeric feel to it, because when you're in that process where you're just learning the patterns of the scales, you can't really think too musically yet. You're just trying to remember where to put your fingers to get the right notes that fit in the key that you're playing in. Where it crosses over into music and where it becomes a great and helpful thing is when you finally use them enough that it becomes second nature and you don't have to think about what notes you're playing in a scale. And in fact, if you do it enough, you'll get to the point where you can hear in your head what a note is going to sound like before you play it with your fingers because you've used those scales so often. At that point is where you're really flowing, and now you're making music, and your music theory knowledge enhances the feeling of what you're playing because you can play from the inside out, hearing in your mind's eye everything that you want to play and knowing how to get it to your fingers rather than just kind of fumbling around and guessing and being surprised by what you're playing. So no, knowing music theory should not rob you of the ability to play with feeling, although it may feel like that in the earliest stages of learning it. But once you really get it down, it's going to enhance your ability to play with feeling because you can play from the inside out, as I was saying. Number 2, if you learn all the rules, you'll never learn all the cool things that break those rules. We musicians as a breed are anti-authority, right? We don't need your damn rules.
Every day when you walk the depths!
Here's the thing about knowing theory and knowing the rules. Just because you know them doesn't mean you have to stick to them. And in fact, if you're going to do something out of the ordinary and break the rules, how are you going to even know that you're doing that and doing something cool and extraordinary if you don't even know what comprises ordinary? Number 3, you're going to write boring songs. So this is kind of like number 1, but I'm talking more about full songwriting here, where people think that if they understand theory, they're going to start writing chord progressions and putting together songs in a way which is more like following a chart and painting by the numbers. As I said before, when you delve into theory, it's going to get you to the point where you can start to hear in your mind what it is that you want to play, and so that applies to chords and not just single notes too. You can start to have a sense of what chord comes next or what you're hearing in your head, rather than just kind of fumbling around and playing chords on the instrument until you find what you're looking for. None of this is going to keep you from experimenting, and in fact, knowing the progressions, the sounds of them in your head, and the theory behind it will allow you to delve even deeper into experimental type of music because you'll know when you're stepping outside the norm. The only thing that can hold you back from that is you, not music theory. Number 4, the greats don't know any music theory.
You don't actually read or write music, do you?
No.
Of course you can write great music without knowing any theory, but remember, that doesn't mean you're not actually using any, it just means you're not using the labels. Theory ends up giving you names for things that you just end up kind of making your own names or visual ideas for anyway, and it's kind of like a roadmap. You could leave New York and head west and try to find the Pacific Ocean with no map whatsoever, and if you just kind of keep following the sun, you'll definitely get there. But how much quicker would you get there if you had a road map that showed you the interstate straight from the East Coast to the West Coast? And that's my best analogy. That's what theory is. It's a really good roadmap. Number 5, theory is pretty much only for classical composers. This is a less common misconception, but I definitely hear it where people think that you have to learn music theory only if you're going to do film scores and classical compositions and that kind of thing. And especially if they're fans of classic rock, blues, that kind of thing, they've heard musicians talk about how they don't know how to read music, as I put in that George Harrison clip before. Now, to be sure, if you're composing an entire symphony, understand the interplay between all those complex instruments and the harmonic structures definitely is going to require much more of a knowledge of music theory than playing like blues guitar or playing in a rock band. But knowing the theory, as I've been saying all along, is definitely going to help you break out of just being that player that repeats the same pentatonic licks over and over again. So there it is. I feel like this is a big sales pitch for learning music theory, and maybe it is. But tell me what you think. Do you have any misconceptions about theory? Do you know any theory? Are you thinking of learning it, or are you just totally against it? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have any questions or comments additional to that, let me know and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And until next time, guys, keep making great music. Hey friends, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. It makes the whole world better.